We will now move into round 2 of the debate. This segment will feature the candidates asking each other direct questions that they have prepared. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond, followed by a 1-minute rebuttal from the questioner and a final 30-second response from the candidate. Each candidate has the opportunity to ask 2 questions. So let's begin with the Sask Party candidate from Meadow Lake, Jeremy Harrison. Mr. Harrison, your question.
Well, my question is very much on the fiscal management component. And, we alluded to it a little bit here earlier, but the NDP have a $3 billion hole in their budget that is unaccounted for. And having a NDP staffer say, well, I think we've accounted for it, that's not good enough. It's not good enough because it's not true. They have a $3 billion hole in their budget. They've overrated projections by $800 million. They have not accounted for their gas tax in any way, shape, or form that reflects what they have said that they are going to reduce it by. So I guess my specific question for Matt would be on the gas tax holiday that you have in your platform document accounted for at $62.5 million. It's a $520 million per year revenue source. How can you account for that?
Mr. Love, you now have 2 minutes to respond to Mr. Harrison.
Yeah, I guess I would say to all of our viewers and those joining us today that luckily for you, you don't need to take my word for it or Mr. Harrison's word for it. You can look yourself. saskndp.ca/plan. Our entire platform is laid out, including what we're going to do to get our province out of last place in healthcare, out of last place in education, and provide cost of living relief for families who have desperately needed that relief for years and have yet seen no action from the Sask Party government. All of our commitments are laid out. You don't need to take our word for it or listen to a he said debate here on Rogers TV. You can look for yourself at saskndp.ca. Our plan is fully costed. Our commitments are laid out by one of the top financial individuals and public servants that this province has seen over the last 30 to 40 years. Our viewers here today with the Saskatoon Chamber can go online, check that out, and decide for yourselves if our plan makes sense, meets the challenges that our province sees right now in health, education, and cost of living, and they can decide if our plan and our way to pay for it makes sense to them. It's all there for you. We're not hiding a thing. It's available on our website. I encourage everyone to go check that out and send in your questions to your local candidate.
Thank you. Mr. Harrison, you have 1 minute to rebut Mr. Love's response.
Well, I didn't really hear much of a rebuttal other than saying one of their staff members has said that it looks okay. That's not good enough. You can't do budgeting that way. You can't just say, well, we've only accounted for $62.5 million of our gas tax reduction when the gas tax is $520 million of revenue. There is only one option, or there's only one logical conclusion, which is that the NDP would cut the highways budget by just over $200 million. That's the only logical explanation. The NDP need to be forthright on these things. I mean, they have a record in government. They did cut the highways budget. They actually told citizens of a number of communities, if you want your highways fixed, go fix them yourself. We haven't taken that approach. We've dedicated 100% of the gas tax, in addition to that, a lot more, to fixing our highways. And, I can speak to Northwest Saskatchewan particularly. When I was first elected in 2007, our highways were a catastrophe. We have repaved every single one of them.
Thank you. Mr. Love, you have 30 seconds to respond.
We don't need to listen to each other tonight. People of Saskatchewan have all the information that they need to make an informed decision in this election. You're going to hear lots of back and forth tonight, but our commitments are out there. They're publicly shared. We release our platform early. We actually released our costing document a week before that. We've got nothing to hide. What we're here to do is to get our province back on track. The things that matter most to people in Saskatchewan, including healthcare, education, and the cost of living, and our platform delivers on all of those.
Thank you very much. So moving to the NDP candidate from Saskatoon Eastview, Mr. Love, your question.
Thank you so much. My question for my opponent here tonight is we've seen over the last number of years generational challenges with the cost of living in our province and across the country. But we haven't seen any action from the Sask Party government. In fact, they've piled on in one budget year with 31 new taxes and fee increases to go along with utility increases. And it's a government that instead of rising to the challenge, they really piled on Saskatchewan families and individuals. Now we're at campaign time. And my question for Jeremy is, why do you think that Saskatchewan families should continue to pay PST on two key essential areas that families are struggling, and that's children's clothing and groceries? Why is it your position that Saskatchewan families continue to pay your tax on those necessary items?
Well, I'm very, very glad we get to talk about affordability here. And this has been a real focus of our campaign, a very, very large and significant focus of our campaign. We are going to move forward with a very, very significant personal income tax reduction. That's a part of our commitment. Also something that we did in 2008 by raising the basic personal exemption. We took over 100,000 people off the tax rolls at that period of time. We're going to be taking another 54,000 people off the tax rolls with this increase to the basic personal exemption. And this will save a family of four over $3,400 over the next 4 years. That is real money, ongoing, year over year, that's going to be accrued as affordability and savings to that family. Their 6-month gas tax holiday, of which they've accounted for none of it, or a very small portion of it, is not going to be a long-term or enduring affordability measure. I would point as well to an initiative that we undertook just a couple of years ago, or maybe even less than a couple of years ago, a $500 affordability check for every individual here in this province. That was really a result of the fact that we were in a position to provide that affordability relief. In addition to all of that, we have the most affordable cost of living of any jurisdiction in the country, whether that be on housing, whether that be on any number of metrics. We are the most affordable jurisdiction in Canada in which to live. So there are a number of other tax measures that we have introduced over the course of the last number of years that we're going to be introducing if we are so honored to be returned as government. The other thing with regard to PST, I think people need to remember, and I know voters back home sure do, is under the NDP, the PST was 9%.
Thank you. Mr. Love, you have 1 minute.
I'll finish this sentence until the NDP lowered it. Now, the question here to my colleague is really this: why wait for election time to offer cost of living? He just referenced it himself. He gave you the whole history there. They offered $500 affordability checks a couple weeks before a by-election that they desperately wanted to win. They didn't help people when they were struggling. They helped you out when it was good for them. When they were looking out for themselves, they sent out $500 checks right before a by-election. They ended up getting trounced. And then here they are in a provincial election. They could have offered support any time over the last 4 years, and they held back until it was advantageous for themselves. They're not worried about your bottom line. They're not worried about families in Saskatchewan. They're trying to protect their own jobs and their own seats in the Assembly. It's time for Saskatchewan people to reject this kind of self-serving politicking and vote for a party that truly cares, that's going to look out for you all the time, not just when we're asking for your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Harrison, you have 30 seconds.
Well, that, of course, would be something I would disagree with emphatically. This government has added $2 billion of annualized tax relief from the time that we formed government until now. This is something we've been committed to. This is part of the reason why I'm in public life, frankly, is that we lower the tax burden for families and individuals so that they can be successful. So whether that be the graduate retention program, which we introduced, a $20,000 GRP, graduate retention program, that has benefited literally tens of thousands of young people and incentivized them to stay here in Saskatchewan.
Okay, we will go back. Excuse me. We will go back to Mr. Harrison for your final question.
Sure. One of the things I earlier referenced that I'm really very, very proud of is our government's initiative to engage with Indigenous economic leaders on economic reconciliation. A big part of our approach on that, not entirely, but a part of that has been through our Indigenous Investment Finance Corporation. Something that I think has been very successful and is going to be continuing to be very successful. I would ask, Matt, and I genuinely don't know the answer to this, but why did the NDP vote against the introduction of the Indigenous Investment Finance Corporation?
Mr. Love, you now have 2 minutes to respond to Mr. Harrison.
You know, as far as the historical record that Mr. Harrison is bringing up, I'll give him the most honest answer that I can. I don't know. I wasn't there for that. What I do know is that under the leadership of Carla Beck, the Saskatchewan NDP knows that if we need to afford the kind of, if we want to afford the the kind of investments we need to make in this province to get Saskatchewan out of last place in healthcare, out of last place in education, and provide cost of living relief for Saskatchewan families, we need to make sure that there's full inclusion in our economy. That includes Indigenous success and inclusion. That includes economic reconciliation. That includes ensuring that we have an education system that's preparing all of our young people, especially young First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people in Saskatchewan, for the kind of jobs that are available to them now and that will be available as our economy continues to grow and expand and create new sectors. That starts in our education system. So as I answered in a previous question, we've seen graduation rates under this government completely flatline. We've seen a government that has failed young Indigenous students despite a very stern warning from the provincial auditor, noting that this government has done nothing to improve outcomes for young Indigenous students in our K-12 system. So as far as reconciliation, economic reconciliation, that's where we're going to start, by investing in our K-12 education system to ensure that all students, and especially our young Indigenous students, are getting the tools and the supports that they need to succeed at school so that they can succeed beyond school when they enter the workforce or continue their education in post-secondary.
Thank you. Mr. Harrison, you have 1 minute to respond.
Well, I would just say, kind of with regard to the general economic question, I am really very, very proud of the record that our government has put forward. A record of growth, a record of optimism, a record that shows really a vision for our future. We've grown the population of this province by 250,000. You listen to the NDP, they would somehow concoct a scenario where we've lost people. That is entirely not true. We've grown the population by 250,000. Over 100,000 jobs have been created in Saskatchewan during the time that we have had the honor of being government. Over that very same period of time that the NDP were in government, they lost jobs. They lost people. Young people had to leave this province to find opportunity. And that is something that has changed. I know my kids who are 15 and 13 now are going to have a remarkable chance to make their life right here in Saskatchewan, which is a life a lot of my colleagues, my friends, when I graduated from Meadow Lake Carpenter High School, didn't have that same opportunity to make. So that's why I'm doing this. I think that's why Premier Moe is doing this. That's why our government are continuing to create these conditions for success.
Thank you. And Mr. Love, back to you for a 30-second response.
Well, again, in that response, we heard a lot of platitudes. Platitudes about people leaving the province without addressing the fact. Statistics Canada, every quarter of every year for 6 years in a row, more people have left than have moved here from other provinces. Yes, our population is increasing due to international immigration, and that's very important for our province to continue to grow. But the fact is, young people are leaving our province today. Let's keep the focus on what's happening right now in Saskatchewan and build a province that's going to give those people hope and a reason to stay.
Thank you. And finally, we'll go back to Mr. Love for his final question.
Thanks, Margot, and thanks again for the very insightful questions and time here today. My question for Jeremy is this: We've talked in this campaign about the need to hire Saskatchewan, to support local businesses in Saskatchewan, and yet the Sask Party government took a local business, a member of the Greater Saskatoon Chamber of Commerce, removed their contract, and gave it to a company from Newport Beach, California. I'm talking about Surecom Industries. So my question to Jeremy today is, why did you take away the contract and good local jobs from a company right here in Saskatoon and send that contract and those jobs to California?
You have 2 minutes to respond.
Right.
Mr.
No,
Harrison.
thanks, Margot. And I appreciate the questions as well. I think this has been a very informative forum. And, with regard to Saskatchewan companies have had remarkable opportunities here in this province over the course of the last 17 years. And we've really made every effort to ensure that Saskatchewan companies can be successful, and they have been. They have been. We've seen tremendous growth on the part of a number of different industries here in this province. The economy of this province has grown remarkably over the course of the last number of years, and that has been our focus all the way along. And just kind of to some very specific elements of Mr. Love's question, and he referenced their Hire Saskatchewan plan. I can tell you right now that the plan that they put forward is contrary to every single trade agreement that has been entered into in this country. Every single one of them, the Canadian Free Trade Agreement being the most recent one, which was signed off on, by the way, by NDP Alberta at that time. So, their plan is, again, not realistic, not thought through, I think not well understood what the implications are. Our companies have been able to compete around the country and around the world because of the fact that we have agreements that give them the same right to participate in other jurisdictions as they can participate here. Whether it be other countries, whether it be other provinces, if we move down the path of somehow providing these protectionist measures, well, our companies are going to pay a much more significant price for that in the aggregate than are those who would benefit. And the reason for that is because our companies do more business outside of the province than others do here. So their plan is not a realistic one, it's not a feasible one, and it's a plan that would hurt Saskatchewan companies.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. We'll go back to Mr. Love for a 1-minute response to Mr. Harrison.
Still a lot of fear, a lot of non-factual information coming from my colleague here. So here's a fact that the Saskatchewan Party leadership needs to face. Under Premier Scott Moe, the standard of living in Saskatchewan, now this is the GDP per capita, has actually reduced. It's fallen from 65,977 to 63,654. That is a fact. That's the GDP per capita, our standard of living. Why is this so important? That is the first time since the Great Depression that we've seen our province see a lower standard of living. This has not happened since the 1930s. Not even Grant Devine was able to achieve that during his years that my colleague Jeremy here references things in the past. It's happening today in Saskatchewan. A reduction in the standard of living, which is a wild failure of this Sask Party leadership.
Thank you. And Mr. Harrison, you have 30 seconds to provide your final response.
Well, I would just categorically disagree with that. We have a province that is leading Canada in basically every economic category that you can imagine, whether it be the second lowest unemployment rate in the country, whether it be the highest rate of private sector investment into our economy of any jurisdiction in Canada. We've seen remarkable building numbers. All of the metrics by which you are looking at a retail trade was another one. Looking at a growing economy, export growth has gone from $16 to $52 billion a year. All of these things are showing that we are leading Canada. And we would not be leading Canada under the NDP. I can assure you of that. They have a $3 billion hole in their platform, which they have